Something's happening, but it's not loud, it's not chaotic. No, this is a quiet, systematic pattern of collapse. It's happening right now all across the globe. And the question isn't if it will reach the center of power, but when.
One by one. You see, files are being opened, and careers are ending. Powerful figures, all with a connection to Jeffrey Epstein, are being methodically removed. And not gently either. They're being disgraced, they're being forced out into the open.
And the first domino? It falls inside the most famous family on Earth. Over in the UK, King Charles III strips his own brother, Prince Andrew, of all his titles. He's not royal anymore. He's just disgraced. I mean, think about that. A stunning move against your own blood.
Then you jump over to the world of high-tech and high finance. Larry Summers, a former Treasury Secretary, suddenly steps down from the board of OpenAI. It looks like a quiet resignation, but trust me, it's sending a massive signal through Silicon Valley and all the way to Washington.
It just keeps going. A former U.S. senator, a peace envoy, a true giant of diplomacy, George Mitchell resigns from the very institute that has his name on it. And now that institute is actually thinking about erasing his name completely. You know, when institutions start erasing names, that's when you know real fear has entered the building.
And the whole thing just picks up speed. In Norway, a former prime minister gets charged. In France, the cultural minister Jacques Lang resigns. And in the UK, Peter Mandelson is now under investigation. See, this isn't just a few scattered events. It's a web. And someone is pulling it apart, thread by thread.
And that right there brings us to the most crucial point. This is not random chaos. It's a playbook. It's the exact one Machiavelli warned us about 500 years ago. It's the playbook for how power crumbles, not from an enemy at the gates, but from the rot that spreads inside the court itself.
But here's where it gets really strange. While the rest of the world seems to be on fire, a totally different reality appears to exist inside the White House. The inner circle, Donald Trump, Peter Thiel, Howard Lutnick, they seem defiant, unmoved. So the mystery is this: are we looking at a fortress, or is it just the last part of the wall that's about to crumble?
That's the real question, isn't it? Is this a display of unbreakable strength, or is it just a very carefully constructed illusion? Because, Machiavelli taught us that when fear starts to replace loyalty and the numbers turn cold, that illusion starts to crack. And the numbers, well, they suggest the walls are already cracking.
The latest AP Nordic poll just dropped like a stone. Donald Trump's approval rating is sitting at 36%. Let me be clear, that's not a number that signals strength. No, that's a number that signals erosion.
And believe it or not, it gets even worse. Only 29% of Americans think the country is even on the right track. That means 71%, a huge majority, feel uncertain. And in politics, uncertainty is like gasoline for ambition and betrayal.
Okay, so with numbers this bad, a collapse seems like it's got to be inevitable. But what if it isn't? Machiavelli wrote that when a prince starts losing the people's confidence, he doesn't panic in public. No, he follows a playbook for survival.
Step 1 is all about narrative control. Just look at the Epstein files. They've only been partially released. They're full of redactions, full of privileges being claimed. The really crucial pages, especially the ones around Donald Trump, are still under wraps. This isn't transparency, it's containment.
The next step is what you'd call institutional cleansing. The U.S. antitrust chief, Gail Slater, tries to do her job. She moves to block a massive merger. But powerful people, like the lobbyist Pam Bondi, they object. So what happens? Slater gets pushed out. The merger goes through. The message couldn't be clearer. Sacrifice the reformers to protect the financiers.
The third tactic is reward signaling. The oil executive James Gretsch publicly hands Donald Trump a trophy, calling him a champion of clean coal. And what happens the very next day? The EPA announces it will no longer regulate greenhouse gases. This isn't just symbolic. This is transactional politics, right out in the open. You support me publicly, you get rewarded instantly.
And finally, when reality just doesn't line up with your story, what do? You promise a better future. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, shows up promising an economic banquet in 2026, a rocket ship. But when only 34% of people say the economy is good right now, making big promises about tomorrow is a sure sign of weakness today.
This whole stage of control, this playbook built on fear, managing the narrative, and secret deals, it never, ever ends quietly. It always leads to escalation, and it has predictable and very dangerous consequences.
So what happens next? Well, you get three things.
First, internal paranoia just skyrockets. The circle gets smaller, and the loyalty tests get more and more extreme. Second, institutions like the Justice Department and the EPA get hollowed out. They become tools for loyalists, not instruments of the law. And third, public fatigue sets in. So many names fall, so many scandals break, that people they disengage. And you know who benefits from that? The entrenched, always.
And all of this brings us to the endgame. History shows that a moment like this can really only go one of three ways. Path 1, the collapse, where more revelations come out and the inner circle finally fractures. Path 2, the consolidation, where the prince weathers the storm and actually comes out stronger. Or Path 3, the stalemate, which is just a long, grinding power struggle with everyone else. And let me tell you, none of those paths are calm.
And that leaves us with one final question. You have to look at the signals, not the speeches. The resignations are so much louder than the denials. The poll numbers are louder than the promises. History teaches a very uncomfortable lesson here. When this many allies fall this quickly, it is almost never the end. It's the beginning of a much deeper reckoning. So which path do you think we're already walking down?